Hi guys, I'm Dan at vintagevelo.org and today we are back in the workshop building back up the vintage French Velo de Ville. That's a French town bike. This one dates from 1930s, 1940s. We got it in the workshop a few weeks ago. It was a real rusty heap of mess. It's now less rusty and still a bit of a heap, but we are working hard to remedy that. Now we're going to get building this back up. We're going to keep as many of the original parts as possible. I want to keep this as a patina build. I do not want to make this look like a fully restored fresh bike. It should look like a very functional original piece is what we're after. The wheels, if you remember, were not original to the bike, and they were completely wrong, with the wrong type of rim. So what we are going to do, we're going to set this up with an early type 3-speed Sturmey Archer on the back and front, so as we get 3 gears, and we're going to have the quadrant train changer which goes up on the top tube here. It's a very cool setup. They were making those since 1907, so it's a neat upgrade, period upgrade for a bike like this, and it'll make it much more rideable, because I do have an event in mind for this thing. But let's get building this up first. First thing is, as ever, let's get the bottom bracket together. Now, if you remember, we had a few difficulties with the bottom bracket, because it didn't quite come apart, but I've cleaned it up really nicely with it in situ, and I can get in there, get some grease in there, and get the rest of this back together. Well, with a bit of luck, let's see how we go. Great, that's back on there, freshly greased, nice bearings, it's all good. Got to find the nut for the cod pin, of course, because that's gone somewhere, who knows, but I'm sure I'll find one that will fit that. But now, headset time. Well, for the time being, I've just popped the saddle on there and the seat post, just to give me something to clamp onto. Load of springs and stuff on the side. This is not what I'm used to. I have no idea how to set this up. I certainly won't be able to get the reach and stack that I usually ride, but we'll find out how it goes in a bit. I'm going to go ahead now and get the forks on there. Obviously new bearings and bits and bobs like that, but generally they are okay, so hoping they go on quite easily. So, as ever with these old school headsets, there's no bearing cage. It is just a load of loose bearings held on in place with fresh grease, and you assemble it all and hope it doesn't all fall out on the floor in front of you, which does happen. So bit of patience, take your time, and make sure all your race faces are nice and clean, fresh grease, and see how you go. Oh, come on. Oh. Yeah, I don't know why, but it came off and it's not going to go back on. It's threaded for some reason, and there's no damage to anything, and it's as it was, but yeah, this might have to come apart again. No, we got the result. Just a bit tighter than I'd like. Now that's the result. Original headset all reassembled. Now, one thing I'm definitely changing on here is the original stem. If we look here, now This is, if you remember last year, we did a video on death stems, and this is an Ava death stem, or very, very similar to an Ava death stem. It's a very cheap cast item. What I did notice is certainly not the original stem on here. I could see when I cleaned this all up, this has definitely had at least one more stem on there. And yeah, these have a tendency of either shearing off here or actually just snapping straight across there. And, you know, that's just not what I want to happen to me. And it would be really naive of me to do a video on breaking death stems and then go ahead and refit one. So that one is for the recycling. And I have a nice steel one here that I'm pretty certain isn't going to let go on me. So that is all good. And I have checked it fits. Don't forget, French, check everything before you remove any parts or get rid of them, because, you know, it can all be a bit strange. But I think this should go on there. Back on the floor. Now that's the really neat swept back original bars on there. I'm going to crack on now with the rear. I want to get the Mudguards back on here and then start assembling the quadrant changing Sturmey Archer 3-speed. Not a complicated thing, but it is different. The early ones are really quite different from the later trigger style that we're used to. Let's just see how that goes. Guards first. Now here's a really individual feature. I've never seen this before on a bike. We're all used to our rear brakes going through the, being attached by a bolt through the brake ridge. Not on these. These go down. There's a nut and bolt that goes down through the brake bridge. So the hole is downward, this goes down, and then it clamps up underneath through the mudguard as well, clamping the whole thing together. These are, yeah, these aren't jerry-rigged. These are made like this. So these are very specific to this bike. Never seen it before. Probably never see it again. But it's really neat nonetheless. So with the early type quadrant changes, what you get is basically just a little pivoting lever here, which has just a punch out at the back, and it goes through a couple of little holes, and that's all it does. It just notches itself into place on those little holes. But where it really significantly differs, apart from its overall design, obviously it goes on the top tube, not on the bars, but also if we look here at a regular trigger shifter, trigger shifters use cable guide, and these use an open cable that goes through a little wheel just here to guide it down. Unfortunately, this, I have no idea what the gauge this frame is, but yeah, I can't get that to tighten up because it's different. So I'm gonna have to kind of, I'll figure something out in a moment. Okay, got the wheel and Sturmey Archer 3-speed we're going to put on here. It is an old school steel rim. It is a 26 by 1 3/4, which in modern terms 37 by 590. With these old school rims, you really don't get a lot of choice in tyre. Forget a beautifully supple 280 thread count Veloflex tubular, nothing like that. No, it's a straightforward nylon heavy duty road tyre here, but you know, it'll do the job. I've also gone ahead and swapped out to a little bit of an easier, I think that's a 21 tooth rear sprocket on here. But you know, if you haven't got dropouts, or if your dropouts don't allow you to have the fittings for a derailleur, a Sturmey Archer 3-speed is a really easy upgrade to get you just a few gears to get you down the road. We're going to go ahead and get these on here now. Now that's the rear wheel with the Sturmey Archer 3-speed set up on there. I've put the chain on as well. set that up nice and tight, cranked it on in, that's not going anywhere, and I've gone ahead and set the line up as well for the gear shifting quadrant. If you are using these early type quadrants, these cables that connect them are really quite hard to get hold of. They're not made anymore, and they're very thin and specific so they can fit in, so make sure you get the correct cable. The later ones really don't fit, but setting up is very straightforward. Loads of videos of those online, and you've got 3 speeds, very easy to set. Obviously, because here you haven't got a cable guide, just the cable, you get it generally in the right space by moving the actual quadrant shifter. Then you do the fine adjustment at the back. But now I'm going to carry on. I think it's time for brakes. On the subject of the brakes, the fronts here are a much more straightforward bolt through the fork example, and the brake blocks themselves, I liked the original fitting so much. I just cleaned them up, put fresh pads in, and then I'm going to go ahead and fit them. Normally I just put whole new assemblies on there on the pads, but yeah, they look really cool, so we're leaving those and just putting those in place with these. Let's go and get them on. Or not, if it won't go through. It came off. Okay, so up front here there's a little nut thing that goes down, holds the front mudguard in place. Turns out that is somehow inside the forks here, and it obviously opens out and there's a hole through it for that to push through and keep that nut kind of captive. Who'd have thought? Someone thought about this a lot more than I did. There it goes. Now, often when it comes to bars on bikes that you're refurbing, the temptation is to go all out some really nice leather, or something like this, maybe something hand stitched would be really nice. But I don't think it would work. And I scoured eBay and found these rather, well, you know, old school, I think they're called constrictor grips. They just push on. I'm sure the eBay seller I got these off couldn't believe his luck when someone actually bought them. But I think on a bike like this, they will look great. I've softened them up in some hot water, and then you just kind of push them on, I think, and hope, and maybe they'll stay on. I know they're not particularly comfortable, but, you know, period correct wins out. Oh. Not easy to put on either. Starting to make some real progress now, and it's time to play around with the dirty, great big vintage headlights. Now, this is pretty cool. I did initially think that it had been like robbed out and adjusted from a mudguard mount, but actually when you look closely, the bit under here that looks like it might be a mudguard mount actually it closes the lens so as you can get inside. And this whole assembly here is actually original. It was always originally designed to be mounted on the stem, which is really cool. Obviously it kind of adjusted itself, which is why they brazed something on there to stop it from flopping down, but pretty neat. Also, the cabling that is to serve this to the dynamo was obviously completely shot, but I did get lucky. Again, on eBay, I was looking for vintage dynamo cables, a popular search, and I came up with a pack of 10 original old stock dynamo cables. So I'll be playing around with those in a moment, but let's, yeah, I've no idea if it works. Gonna find out on the first ride. Okay, so there we have it. Our 1940s French Velo de Ville is back up and running. It's gone from a rusty pile of old junk back to being an epically cool road bike. I do have a few other tweaks to do. I've got the most ultimate picnic basket to put on the back of this at some point. Yeah, we did find out from one of you viewers that the name badge at the front, it wasn't because Joseph Benadou quite enjoyed his lunchtime pastis and left his bike lying around. It was, in fact, because back in the 50s, some peculiar French law meant you had to register your bike for tax purposes, and that head badge is what was used on there to register this bike with the authorities, which is kind of cool. How it rides, I don't know. We're going to find that out in a later video. But I've got in mind, I'm aiming to do the Anjou Vintage Velo Festival next summer, and it's a very cool, very friendly, lot of fun vintage bike weekend, and this, I'm pretty sure, will just go down a storm at an event like that. So that's what I've got in mind for this bike. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Do like and subscribe for anything else that's cool to do with vintage bikes, mostly hardcore vintage race bikes, to be fair. Thanks a lot.